This is not conservative republicanism. This is stupidity. The idea that we're going to shut the government down when we don't control the Senate, we don't control the White House. These people can't define a win. They don't know how to take yes for an answer. It's a clown show. You keep running lunatics, you're going to be in this position.
That was a Republican congressman, Mike Lawler from New York, essentially calling out members of his own party for the way they've been behaving and their fails in attempting to pass a government funding bill. Now, the far right House Freedom Caucus is basically proving to be a bit of a political liability for the Republican parties on this very issue. The party is fractured on the legislation. And so let's give you an update on what happened this week so far. So look, unless Congress pass and the White House agree to a resolution to fund the federal government beyond September 30th, it will shut down on October 1st. So time is of the essence. They always wait until the last minute to actually take this seriously. But here we are, they haven't come up with an agreement. And regardless of whether Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, agrees to what the more conservative wing of the Republican Party wants, it is very unlikely that that version of the bill will get passed by the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats. Now, with that said, on Tuesday, Speaker McCarthy canceled a procedural vote on a spending proposal after it became clear that the measure did not have the adequate Republican support to pass. Separately, a bill to fund the Department of Defense failed a procedural test on Tuesday when 5 Republicans voted in opposition. Now, the temporary stopgap bill proposed Sunday would have triggered a 1% cut to current fiscal levels, but keep the government funded until October 31st, basically buying them some time to negotiate a more long-term bill. Even if the measure had made it out of the House, it was expected to be rejected in the Senate. So the far right wing of the Republican Party seems to be a little delusional about what they can actually accomplish, because whether they want to accept it or not, Democrats do control the Senate. And if they're planning on passing through a spending bill that would essentially provide no aid to Ukraine and cuts to funding for the Department of Justice so they can provide cover for Donald Trump, it's just not gonna work out. The Senate is gonna send that bill back and say, no, we're not gonna pass that. So it's a mess, and I don't know what's gonna happen moving forward, but currently there are at least 15 House Republicans who are opposed to the spending legislation that was on offer in the House, that 1 month stopgap bill. And given the GOP's 221 to 212 majority, that is more than enough to essentially tank it. So Kevin McCarthy is in a little bit of trouble here. And what do the hard right Republicans want exactly? Like, that's the big question, right? And one of the most vociferous among them is Representative Matt Gaetz, who claims that what he wants is very clear. Let's watch.
We can't blame Joe Biden and the Democrats for why the Republican-controlled House of Representatives hasn't passed single-subject spending bills. That's our fault. So we have to deal with that. We will likely have to endure some degree of a shutdown.
So he does have a little bit of a point when it comes to the single-subject spending bills. So the government is funded through 12 annual appropriations bills, each of which funds a different part of the federal government. In recent years, some or all of these 12 bills have been rolled into a single omnibus package and approved together. Apparently, Matt Gaetz and the House Freedom Caucus had received some promises from Kevin McCarthy that he would pursue the single issue bills. And clearly that's not the case when it comes to the government funding bill. But as you're about to hear from Mitch McConnell in the Senate, he's the Senate minority leader. Listen, if you're using this debate as a way of getting policy done, I got news for you. Let's watch.
I think all of you know I'm not a fan of government shutdowns. I've seen a few of them over the years. They never have produced a policy change, and they've always been a loser for Republicans.
They've always been a loser for Republicans. So Cenk, what do you think about this so far?
So first, that Republican Congressman, Mike Lawler, sounded like me. Wasn't that interesting, the way that he was calling them lunatics and what the hell do you want, etc. I haven't seen Republicans this split in a long time. And part of the reason for that is because they showed up to the theater expecting the regular play, but they got something else entirely. They showed up for Les Mis and got cats. And so what the hell's going on here? Because normally the way that this play works is the Republicans go, oh, we are going to shut the government down unless you give us extra spending cuts, which by the way, they already did. They did it earlier. And it was over the debt ceiling, and then Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden got a deal, and they got spending cuts because that's how the game is played. Biden wants to do the spending cuts too. He just has to play along with this game and then go, oh, I can't believe Kevin McCarthy made me do it, right? And so they shook on it and they had a deal, and it was supposed to go through this issue as well. So there was supposed to be no debt ceiling fight and no government shutdown. And what did the Republicans do? They reneged. Number one, because they're Republicans. You can't trust them at all. These Republican politicians are all uniformly outrageous liars, right? That's why even Republican congressmen are calling the rest of the Republicans lunatics now, because that's who they are. So now that regular play got interrupted by these insane demands. Hey, I want the entire Department of Justice defunded. What? Okay, I want the Pentagon stop being woke. What does that even mean, right? So why are they doing this is the natural question.
Because when the government doesn't get the spending bill or the funding bill passed, they don't have to worry about their salaries being on the line. And I think their salaries should be on the line.
Oh, of course.
I think the number one thing that should happen every time they play games with this legislation, which is literally every year.
Every year.
Every year. I'm so sick of the same story. Every freaking year. The press loves it. They love the drama, right? Yeah. This story's been brewing for like a few weeks now. And I didn't want to cover it until this week because you don't need to know every minor update to the story because nothing is serious. They don't take the job seriously. They don't take any of it seriously, right? Oh, national parks will get defunded. Who cares? Oh, people who need food stamps aren't going to be able to access the service as a result of the government not being funded. Who cares? No, I care. A lot of people care. A lot of Americans care. They work their asses off, they pay their taxes, and they expect you to do your damn jobs. And since they're not willing to do their damn jobs, how about your salaries are on the line? How about there is a freeze on your salaries until you do your goddamn jobs and pass the legislation? How about that?
And I'll add one more thing to it. First of all, Anna's idea is indisputable. Of course, they won't do it because it's their salaries. They'll cut your salaries, but not their own. But I would say not only freeze their salaries, but every day that they are in a government shutdown, they never get that money back, right? Because sometimes the salaries are frozen, and then they get a lump sum at the end. No lump sum for you. No cookies for you. You're not showing up to work. You're not getting paid. That's what the average American worker has to deal with. That's what these scummy politicians should have to deal with. Okay, so but to finish my thought, the reason why the script is different now is because the far right is doing tons of grassroots fundraising. So unfortunately, now that's a good thing overall, okay, because you don't want it coming from corporations, etc. You want it coming from the grassroots. But unfortunately, that makes them desperate for attention. Anything to do with attention so they can send an email going, I've been attacked by Kevin McCarthy. I've been attacked by Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, etc. So then they raise more money, get more attention, And so the point is the attention itself, the drama itself. The point isn't something that they actually want.
Bingo.
That's why you can't solve it. Because they don't actually want anything. So for example, if Matt Gaetz stuck with that one issue and said, well, look, they said that we would vote on these bills individually. And by the way, that's a totally fair ask.
Agreed.
Look at us being fair. That's the right wing asking for that, and it's fair.
And he was promised that. To be fair, in addition to being fair about the whole point of single issue bills, he was promised that, right? In the whole debt ceiling fight, McCarthy said, listen, if you play ball, if you cooperate, Matt Gaetz, I'll give you what you want with the single issue bills. But obviously that's not happening, and Gaetz is right to be upset at McCarthy reneging on that promise. So I give him credit for that, but that is not the only thing he is claiming to want. He wants things that are literally delusional and undoable.
Yeah, and guys, we're telling you, if he just went for that, he'd actually win. And that's why I told progressives, like, go for paid family leave. then you'll get paid family leave, right? There's a way to insist on something and have reasonable demands that you could actually deliver on, especially if you're right about them. But that's why you see the unreasonable demands, because they don't want to win. They want the attention for as long as possible. For them, that is the win, not the resolution. They don't give a damn about you. The resolution helps you. It doesn't help them. The conflict helps them. That's why you're gonna see tons of media coverage about this, tons of like, oh, what's going to happen? We all know what's going to happen. So right now, there's definitely going to be a shutdown because they're asking for insane things like, oh, give me the moon and I want it in Matt Gaetz' pocket. If you don't give me the moon in Matt Gaetz' pocket, we're not going to vote yes. Well then, lunatic, how the hell are we supposed to have a conversation?
You know, what's also really interesting is that the moderates are getting, the moderates within the Republican Party, believe it or not, they do exist to some extent. They're the individuals who won in swing districts, districts that Biden won during the 2020 presidential election. They're concerned about what the House Freedom Caucus is demanding and how it's gonna hurt them politically. And so get a load of this. Some hard right Republicans support lowering the top line budget to about 1.4 trillion, which is below the 1.6 trillion agreed upon by McCarthy and President Joe Biden earlier this year. That was the agreement in the midst of that whole debt ceiling fight, right? However, moderates have said they have no incentive to cut spending further. I never thought I would see a day where Republicans would be on the record saying, no, we actually don't want to cut funding. But in this case, it's the moderate Republicans who ran and won in swing districts, and they see the far right wing of the Republican Party as a political liability. And to be sure, they are a political liability to the moderates. Now, Democrats have ridiculed the idea that they should vote for a lower spending number than what McCarthy and Biden had agreed to back in May, and they're right to feel that way. So House Republicans' push for lowering spending has led them to seek cuts to the IRS, Securities and Exchange Commission, and Consumer Product Safety Commission. Gives you a sense of what the priorities are for these Republicans, right? Anything that benefits ordinary people, they want to cut funding to. Interesting. Now, Democrats have also sharply criticized the proposed cuts to the education budget, which Representative Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, said would lead to 22,000 fewer teachers. And other things that would happen when the government doesn't get the funding it needs to continue operating. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers will not receive a timely paycheck. Government workers who are considered essential will be forced to work without getting paid. They will get paid later once the legislation finally passes. But these are people who have families, who have mortgages, who have to pay rent. They basically have to put their livelihoods on the back burner while they keep working because Congress can't be bothered to do its job. And honestly, take a look at the situation at hand realistically and move forward based on what the facts are. And the facts are a far right-wing government funding bill ain't gonna pass in the Senate. It's just not.
Yeah, so look, these guys, like I said, they don't want it to pass. So at the end of the day, how are they going to actually fund the government? Because at some point they've got to go forward, right? And last time, if you remember, we had the longest government shutdown. It was 28 days. And the reason it got resolved is because eventually the air traffic controllers stopped showing up to work because they hadn't gotten paid in about a month. So they're like, well, good luck with the airplanes. We'll see you guys later, okay? And then people panicked, and then they resolved the government shutdown. The reason you need that kind of panic is because Republicans don't care about government workers not getting paid. None of the things that get affected in a shutdown affect the rich at all.
And it doesn't affect them either. So by the way, your salary should be frozen. And your, those sweet, sweet health benefits that you get, frozen.
Oh my God, if you froze their health care benefits while the government is shut down, they will all panic. What if we get sick? Exactly.
They have no problem essentially putting all, like, how many people are we talking about here? I mean, untold numbers of government workers who literally have to put their livelihoods on the back burner. They don't care about that at all.
So they're never gonna care about those guys. So that's why they have no incentive not to do the shutdown. So at the end of the day, we're gonna have to have an emergency against something like the air traffic controllers. And at that point, probably the Republicans, some portion of the Republicans will vote with some portion of the Democrats to get a bill to go through, because the lunatics are never going to say yes.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us. Become a Young Turk.